The Boys is an Amazon original show that expertly explores how superheroes would behave if they were in fact real people. The frontrunner and by far most interesting and compelling character in the series is the show's parody of Superman, Homelander. Is Homelander a psychopath? This is such an enthralling and fascinating question to me, as it can be answered in so many different ways. Homelander was created in a lab, so is he even a real human with real emotions at all? We can't answer that. Homelander displays many traits that I would consider psychotic. However, context is key here, as we know exactly why Homelander exhibits these traits. Todd Alquist isn't the most famous and powerful man in his universe, neither is Patrick Bateman. Homelander is, and begs the question of whether you or I would behave the same given this scenario. With that being said, let's dive into the first and most notable psychopathic trait: lack of empathy. On the surface, Homelander has empathy. After all, he's a superhero. It's early in the show, however, that we discover this to be laughably not the case. Homelander has an inflated ego, and only has a mask of empathy to keep his public image as squeaky clean as possible. The scene that cements Homelander as having no empathy is, of course, the infamous plane scene.
No, man, no, you stay back! All of you, stay back! You stay the fuck back or I'll laser you, goddammit! I'll laser every fucking one of you! Stay back!
One of the best scenes in the show, it really shows us who Homelander truly is. Not an ounce of thought or worry about the 100+ people that are about to lose their life. He simply is indifferent, and would rather watch the plane go down. No empathy here whatsoever. The next trait we're going to touch on is superficial charm. Again, it's a very fascinating thing to talk about. Homelander, you could argue, has only known how to be a media zombie his entire life. How to be charming and great with people. It's all he knows. It's very apparent he's charming. The nation loves him, and will support him at any turn. He has open and honest body language, and a strong, projected voice that fills its listeners with certainty. Let's move on to high intelligence. Homelander, in my opinion, isn't very smart. He never displays any behaviour indicating intelligence. But that's not to say he isn't smart. A superhero must be accompanied by a super brain, right? So I'm going to assume this to be the case with Homelander. However, this can be savagely argued by the Deep, who is very dumb. Let's move on to manipulation. Homelander is very manipulative. He is always seen manipulating the public, for example his cover-up of the plane crash, as well as manipulating people, such as his treatment of Starlight throughout the show. But it is clear that Homelander is also easily manipulated himself. This is shown by his encounters with Madeline, in which Homelander displays vulnerability and submission towards the Vought mogul. Again, Homelander is a character that you almost have to cognitively empathise with and understand. If you were in his shoes, would you do the same? It's fair to say, however, that other superheroes such as Maeve and even Starlight are opposites to Homelander, although they too have powers, so it truly begs the question of whether Homelander is just a psychopath. Let's move on to shame. Homelander does display shame. He is visibly uncomfortable and distressed whenever the public are outraged by his actions. A psychopath would not care. I wouldn't do anything about this. Homelander instead tries his utmost to fix things. Psychopaths feel no shame, and it's very apparent that Homelander does. This is also displayed in the scene where Homelander's blanket from his childhood was used without his permission in a manufactured video about his childhood home. On the surface, Homelander does display every single psychopathic trait to a certain degree and extent. However, do I think that Homelander is a psychopath? Absolutely not. Homelander is a very flawed and complex character who was literally made in a lab. Because of this, I don't think it's fair to draw human comparisons and diagnosis that aren't even relevant to him. Instead, I would argue that Homelander is probably a sociopath. Brought up in a world where he is the centre of attention, he gets everything he wants and everything goes his way, whilst also being starved of real human connection, would probably really fuck someone up, and thus cause them to act the way Homelander does and treat people the way Homelander does.